This is the updated Kia EV6, and in this video we'll find out together what it can do. We're talking about the interior without piano lacquer, the new design and infotainment, comparing it with the GT line, driving together, testing the assistance systems and the larger batteries. Hello, and a very warm welcome to this exciting new video here at Jonas, and also a big welcome to our very first driving impression of the newly updated version of the fascinating Kia EV6. More battery capacity while reducing costs, and here in the mid-range trim version, it's absolutely worth it for me to showcase the car to you. Because not everyone buys the absolute top spec variant. Here we have the large battery with rear-wheel drive, but the mid-range equipment version. Feel free to write in the comments how you like the new model. Initially, I was a bit skeptical on the front line. Make sure that you don't miss any future updates like this by subscribing to the channel right away. It significantly supports my work, and you will definitely be notified in the future when we carry out testing of brand new or used electric cars for you. Now let's take a look at the car from the outside. The facelift begins in the R Exhibition variant with the new smaller 62.9 kilowatt-hour battery starting at €49,190. You get 170 horsepower, or you can choose the 84 kilowatt-hour battery with 229 horsepower, or go up to the all-wheel drive with 326 horsepower. The vehicle starts from €56,690. Visually, a lot has changed. The silhouette of the daytime running lights has been completely revised. Now a bit more of the body color flows directly into the lamp, and there are now, let's say, matrix headlights. Of course, they can't be called that, but they have the corresponding function which was not available before, and is now making its way into the vehicle, which I find a very welcome topic because we're benefiting from it in the EV9. I am hopeful that the slightly larger lenses will offer a much more pronounced and significantly better lighting pattern in this context. The practical test will clarify that. Furthermore, the redesigned front end looks noticeably fresher, featuring updated air intakes and active air curtains situated in the lower section. Looking at it from the side profile, the car appears practically unchanged. It showcases the well-known lines and includes the small lighting directly positioned at the roof. Spoilers have consistently looked quite appealing to me during nighttime. Additionally, you'll receive the standard 18-inch wheels and, as an option, the 20-inch ones showcased here. At the rear, the light signature has also been revised, which means that the freshly redesigned star map pattern has now made its way here as well. That means the piano keys, as you previously used to see them, are now only visible on the brake. To be completely honest, I thought the rear of the earlier model was more visually appealing, simply due to the fact that the light strip appeared more significant and larger. However, you can feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. Underneath there, you will find the trunk with a brand new roller shade. It's skillfully crafted from recycled materials, much like a variety of features within the vehicle's interior. And right here you find 540 liters with an innovative double load floor. That's quite a substantial amount and can certainly compete well in the broader competitive environment with something like a VW ID.4. The towing capacity remains unchanged at 1.8 tons and the nose weight is 80 kilos. What only becomes noticeable in direct comparison with the GT line is that the earth trim level here with us does not have the continuous light strip at the front. I find it unfortunate and haven't read it elsewhere. Overall, there are a few design differences. For instance, in the GT line, the air vents down here are directed more towards the outside, whereas in the equipment we just looked at, they are positioned in a straighter alignment. And there are 20-inch rims that are only for the GT line. But what can I tell you when I have someone here who drives the car daily? Tarek, come over here.
Hello, my dear ones, I greet all of you.
Pump and podcast partner himself personally drives the EV6 in the GT line version.
Now the older model.
The old one. It's awful how a new car makes you feel outdated. But at least you have a color that's no longer available here, the matte gray, because it was discontinued.
It's called Moonscape, and it was definitely my absolute favorite color ever. A bit high maintenance, folks, with a car wash and matte paint. But Kia has really stepped up with the new GT line.
Matte blue shade.
Yacht blue, that. So the old yacht blue in metallic is still available, but for the GT line, there's also the matte option. And take a look, there's a yacht blue available. However, not in matte, but yes, it's in matte. Yes, that's in matte. Look there.
Okay.
Lovely color, right here, totally awesome.
Tarek, views on the new car?
Interesting, very interesting. Especially me as an EV6 driver, I will have mixed feelings today. Let's closely examine the full design. I have to emphasize that the main focus is truly on the front, which has been completely altered. In this particular star map design, it continues to maintain a somewhat aggressive look and an assertive stance. It still retains its distinct character, yet now feels more modern and nicely fits into the entire Kia lineup.
Now we just talked about it, the interior has stayed almost the same, so the seats are identical to yours, only the steering wheel has been renewed and there are now capacitive touch controls on the steering wheel, no more jiggling needed. Right, works for both models. This one has a 3-spoke sports wheel, the other a standard one.
And the software, of course, a lot has changed, and there's been quite a bit happening under the car as well.
Tarek drives the all-wheel, so if you want to see it, check it out. That's why it has a tiny spark.
Yeah.
This brings us to the interior, and visually, not much has changed here. There's a brand new steering wheel, which has been upgraded to be touch sensitive. This means that you no longer need to physically turn it for the assistant to recognize your presence. And behind that, there are still the two 12-inch displays. I find it very unfortunate that the driver information display in particular hasn't been updated in terms of design. Because in my opinion, you waste a lot of space. The ads are not the thing. What you could potentially achieve on this display area. The display positioned right next to it offers significantly more, now also featuring Apple CarPlay and Android Auto wirelessly, along with a comprehensively revamped plan for charging. That can now also intelligently store charging stops for you. Other than that, the interface is something I really quite like a lot. I also know it from our EV9. The climate display next to it on the left has been omitted. This option continues to be available in the lower section with this switch function that allows toggling between the shortcuts and the climate control settings. Another level down, there are currently new hard buttons available. Previously, they were soft touch elements. At this spot, you are now able to manage the seat ventilation, heating, as well as the steering wheel heating system. I find it really cool. And what I like even more is that both in the center console and the door panel, there's absolutely no more piano lacquer used anymore. But instead, it finally showcases this sleek, brushed aluminum look. Some people are going to like that. Behind it, there's a new 15-watt charging pad for phones. Going from 5 to 15, that's an impressive increase indeed. I really quite like the seats. All right, you're really sitting comfortably here, and you can also hear I recorded the voiceover and the earlier part in the car to show you how the passive sound insulation is in the car. To my right is a road, and to my left is the roaring sea. It's quite windy, and yet you can hear me, I think, quite well here in the car because it's really quiet, unless a motorcycle passes by. Let's see how quiet the driving noise has become in a moment. But first, a quick look at the back seat. It can be adjusted at multiple different angles and includes ISOFIX on the outermost seats. I'm checking, but no. Sadly, there's no ISOFIX on the passenger seat. I believe that's all. Oh, the steering wheel is now electrically adjustable. I find that very handy. Take me along and let's drive. Also try it in regular rear-wheel drive. So switch it into sport mode and step on it. With 229 horsepower, that's more than enough. The sound of it really adds some extra excitement to the experience. Then it immediately feels much more efficient. But that should be more than enough. Personally, I tend to favor it when it's calm inside the car because you can relax a lot more, and after all, it's an electric car. It's really quite nice when there's no pressure from outside noises and you don't need that engine sound. The car manages this excellently. The climate control hums quietly in the background, but I can't directly compare it to the regular E-Mix, unfortunately. I'd like to refer you to Tarek, who drives the car every single day. I must say that it feels like there's not much sound or air coming in from the footwell area, especially around the wheel arches and wheel housings. Was insulated the most, and I find that important. And the floor should also be decoupled from the battery. Some truly fascinating topics to make the interior even more peaceful and quiet. In a rather uncommon move for a facelift, the suspension system of the car was also thoroughly revised here. It means you now have a slightly more selective option. It's not an adaptive system that you could readily adjust. Yet, it can respond better to certain situations. Do you notice that quite strongly here? No, I am not planning to present it as a comparison in the video. I merely want to convey that it genuinely drives really well. In sport mode, as we've just seen, you can truly step on it with ease. However, in the normal modes, it's more than sufficient as well. The car is equipped with the iPedal feature, which makes it possible to smoothly regenerate energy all the way until a complete stop. That it's now even available when reversing, I find super practical, and you can also set it, if you don't like it, in 3 different other levels or just in automatic mode. And then the vehicle gently rolls forward, not onto the car in front of it, but kind of like having ACC. It does not utilize route guidance systems. Rather, it completely relies on radar technology. So if he brakes in front of me now, I also brake or recuperate without actually doing anything. I find it incredibly cool, and I understand that many of you might not necessarily feel the same way. On the highway, you can hear a bit more wind noise, particularly at the bottom end of the hood, as if the wind is actually breaking somewhat on this black surface. That's just my own personal perception and viewpoint, as it's generally quite remarkably quiet inside, making the entire driving experience both pleasant and genuinely relaxing for everyone involved. Additionally, as is typically expected with Kia models, the drive assist system is very cool and highly differentiable because, on the one hand, I have this steering wheel button, which allows me to accelerate myself while still being guided in the lane. I don't know of any other manufacturer that does that. Usually it's only in conjunction with the adaptive cruise control. Here, I can even press down on the gas pedal myself now, and the car still maintains its track. I can, of course, also choose to add the highway drive assist feature to my booking if I want. And then the distance ahead is also carefully adjusted, and it does this in a very sensible manner indeed. Now he has to slow down because there's someone slower in front of us. Let's see how quickly he overtakes. In this case, we're utilizing the semi-autonomous lane change assistant. It gracefully accelerates towards the left and then gains even more momentum. He could definitely start accelerating a bit earlier for me. Sure, it's always a bit tricky figuring out the right moment to do it. And I have my particular issue with pausing or actually disengaging the cruise control system. On the left, you conveniently have the option to just click pause. As a frequent driver, I often find myself keeping my foot positioned on the pedal that I feel like, okay, now I'm around 120, then I get on it and then I always sort of fall into it a bit. Yeah, that's ultimately due to the recuperation, and if it's too high, then the vehicle can't modulate it anymore and goes straight into recuperating. But I'm contemplating, if I successfully manage to maintain the speed at 120 with my foot and am able to continue in a consistent manner, why would I then begin to experience any slowdown, even though I'm still keeping exactly the same pedal position as before? I always find that strange, but it's the same with our EV9. The suspension also, a good shape, so nothing too special there. However, it's definitely tuned more sportily than, for example, the EV3 from yesterday, if I may use that as a comparison with 3 here. Of course, I can't test the top speed right now. I can't say how fast it still accelerates at the top end. I can say, however, that in everyday life, the rear-wheel drive has always been more than sufficient and is fun. And the assistance systems here as well, for example. This blind spot camera assistant, which is optional, mind you. They are doing their job really properly, and then you can easily drive long distances with the car because that's ultimately what it's intended for, especially with the combination of a large battery and rear motor. Even though the consumption is relatively meaningless here at such a driving event, and especially as I only drove 40 kilometers with the car today, I tell you 22 kilowatt hours over the entire time and 19 kilowatt hours here on a rather long distance or country road drive. I wouldn't even call it a highway because those few spots where it was 120 in Germany, they would cover that with fast or country roads. So, as a first indication for you, that's perfectly okay. But honestly, with an outside temperature hovering around 25 degrees, it really isn't anything surprisingly low at all. Everything else will have to be a real-world test. The only thing missing is the charging topic, and unsurprisingly, I can't show you that here at the charging station. I wasn't able to drain the battery. I only had access to the card this morning, just to make that clear here. Of course, a charging test will follow in Germany. However, I know that the charging curve has been significantly adjusted because with a larger battery, you also need a better charging speed to maintain the impressive 18-minute period for charging from 10 to 80%. This was precisely what Kia aimed to achieve, and it appears they've successfully managed to accomplish that here. With a capacity of 258 kilowatts, the vehicle is now able to peak at charging versus 239, thus achieving almost 20 kilowatts more capacity. And it's also a bit differently shaped. I'll overlay a picture here for you. So the charging curve was indeed adjusted once more, and I believe it's a good thing. That the charging time hasn't increased despite the battery being larger, and instead, considerable efforts were made with the thermal management system in the battery to make this feasible and achievable in practice. And charging, unsurprisingly, happens at the rear right with a motorized charging flap. Unfortunately, with this normal plug in the EV9 and also in the EV3, there are cool solutions with a flap, but this will still dangle around the car. That really should have been all by now. What are your thoughts and opinions on the EV6 right here in the gap? Updated version, does the film still tell you a few things? I would have liked more. What are your thoughts on the design? I still feel a bit conflicted when looking at it from the back. I'm super excited for your feedback in the comments. If you haven't already, feel free to subscribe to the channel for free down here, and up here I'll show you my latest review of the Mimi 6.